Solo mode is the solo mode, and you're all alone in the solo mode, and you miss your group, or you had some kids, but you bought some games. Why did you buy those games? It's the solo mode, it's the solo mode, and you're all alone in the solo mode, and your group is gone, or you had some kids, but you bought those games. Why did you buy those games? Oh, and welcome to the very first episode of Game Brain Solo Mode. This is not your usual episode of Game Brain. We're trying something a little new here. We're trying some bite-sized, single-serving episodes focusing just on solo board gaming. I'm going to be attempting to do a 30-minute or less review of a single board game. Nothing else, no news, no board game sommelier, no guests, just me, Matt Robinson, and one review. You haven't heard from me on the podcast in a little while because I disappeared into the baby zone. We had our second child, a lovely, sweet little lady named Joni. And because of that, I can't regularly attend game nights, but I have a game brain, so I have been gaming. Let's talk a little bit about what solo board gaming is and why we do it. Well, first of all, solo board gaming is a fantastic and very viable way to enjoy this hobby. And I cannot fathom a distinction between sitting on one's couch playing a computer game or a video game or sitting at your dining room table and playing a board game. There will be no stigma associated to solo board gaming here. In fact, you can be a complete and fully satisfied member of our board game community and your board game community. If you are just a solo board gamer, that is totally fine. You are welcome here, and you will find a kindred spirit in me because I love solo games. So why do I love solo games? Because I love games, and it is hard to get people together. That is one of the amazing and also difficult parts of our board game hobby, is that there are few things harder in the world to do than coordinate multiple people arriving in the same place at the same time with 2 to 6 hours to spare to take part in a recreational activity. That is a difficult thing to achieve. So many people turn to board games. We are in the golden age of solo board games. There are very few games released these days that do not have some sort of a solo component. Designers have recognized that this is a large part of our gaming community. We are growing as a gaming community, and therefore people want to game more. And the best way to game more is to be able to game on your own. So this is an offshoot of the normal Game Brain podcast. I don't know how often I'll be doing these. I'm going to try to do these at least once to twice a month. Maybe I'll be prolific and get once a week out. We'll see what happens. But I hope that you'll find this interesting. We're really just going to be focusing on the solo aspect of board games. If it is a multiplayer game, I will be focusing completely on the solo mode. We're going to be talking about different types of solo games. Let's talk about really quickly. Let me just break down sort of what a solo game is. There are a few different types and a few different goals of many solo games. There is your basic optimization puzzle. Think of it as beating your best score. This is a game where it's usually a multiplayer game. These are sort of the old versions of solo games before we've had these awesome newfangled AIs that have come about recently, or quote-unquote AIs. Optimization puzzles. This is just a way to sort of go through the mechanics of the basic game and try to beat your score. That's sort of your basic solo mode that we've had for a long time in board games. A lot of them were variants, fan-made, just a way to enjoy a game that was not designed to be played solo. And really, it wasn't meant to mimic a human opponent. It was just play the game, beat your score, see if you can do better and better every time. Lately, we have had quote-unquote AIs. We've had decks of cards or some sort of a flow chart that's going to help you mimic a human opponent. That is another type of popular board game solo mode these days, is the quote-unquote AI. I would say the third type of solo game are games that offer an immersive, often story-based experience. These are not games attempting to replicate a multiplayer experience. These are games that are often best as solo, or at least best as co-op games. These are almost always co-op games that can be played just as well, if not best, as solo games. Those are sort of the three types of solo games if I had to break them down into categories. Beyond that, the two subcategories are games that I would consider sort of lunch break games. Games that you can be set up and playing in just a few minutes with the potential to play that same game multiple times. Something that has a short setup time and the game usually plays in under 30 minutes or so and will give you a wonderful board game experience that you can have by yourself very quickly, while you're waiting for your baby to wake up from its nap, or while you have 30 minutes to kill or whatnot. The other subcategory I would put it in is Sunday afternoon games. Put a pot of coffee on, spend 30 minutes setting up all the chits and bits and meeples and cubes, and then spend hours playing the game. That is also a wonderful way to play a board game in the solo mode version. And we're going to be sort of breaking down games into those categories as we talk about them. I'm also going to give you a score at the end of this and how I feel about it. I'm going to do like a real review where I give you a 1 out of 10 score. Why? Because I think the average person that's listening to this is really looking for a more than just a long review, which we're not going to be doing. These are going to be bite-sized reviews. You want to know really if this is a game for you. And I hope that as somebody with a lot of experience in solo board game, I can give you a real estimation of how I feel about this and if it is worth your time and your money, because your time and your money are huge components of deciding whether or not a board game is for you if you're going to be playing it by yourself. That is enough of the preamble. Let us get right into our very first board game review. This is a review of the Corset of Marvel Champions, the card game. Just the Corset. Why do I have to say that this is just the Corset? Well, because what this is a game by Fantasy Flight Games. I'm going to tell you the designers right now. It was designed by 3 people, Michael Boggs, Nate French, and Caleb Grace. Published by Fantasy Flight Games, which means Asmodee as well. Marvel Champions, the card game, is a living card game for Fantasy Flight Games. This is a genre of card games that I have a lot of experience with. I have played almost every single LCG that came out, and a few of them I've played quite seriously. So let's talk about my history with LCGs. I have played Netrunner from day one that it was released. I played it for about 5 or 6 years. I went to tournaments. I traveled to Gen Con to go to tournaments there. I played in multiple states. I took it way too seriously. I played HB. If you know what that means, you know that I like Big Ice. It died out at a certain point, and I sold my whole collection and decided it was just too much for me to keep trying to find people to play because it was getting too hard. And also, they kind of killed it off at a certain point. I actually left before they officially killed it off. But yeah, after that, it was the Game of Thrones card game, which I got super into. I was there at the Gen Con launch of that. I played that for probably 2 years, really into it, played in tournaments, loved it. I played the Lord of the Rings cooperative card game. I have played Destiny, which is sort of their dice LCG. And I got super, and still am super into Arkham Horror, the card game. So I have played a lot of card games made by Fantasy Flight Games, and many of them made by Nate French as well. So I have a bit of experience with these and the cycle that these come in, and I'm also very aware of the way that I can burn out on these games. I've been through it all. This is not my first rodeo with any LCG. I know what to expect. I know how the card bloat gets. I know how the barrier of entry to new players coming in becomes almost insurmountable financially and time-wise to catch up on strategy after thousands of cards have been released over 3 or 4 years. So we're going to look at it through the lens of my semi-expertise on these, because I think Marvel card games is a little bit of a course correction on their part and a way of dealing with some of the issues that had come about in the past. And I think it's a very streamlined and smart way for them to handle LCGs either from this point forward or just with this. Maybe this one's just an anomaly. So let's talk about what exactly Marvel Champions is. It is a cooperative living card game, meaning that in the core set of the box, you are going to get 5 superheroes. Each of them is going to come with a deck that only can work with that hero. Quickly, you are going to get Captain Marvel, Black Panther, She-Hulk, Spider-Man, Tony Stark. I appreciate the diversity of characters they've chosen here, and then some of them are, like especially She-Hulk, characters that do not have their own movie, and are awesome, cool characters to play with. It's going to show that, they're letting you know that they're not just going to be giving you the Captain Americas, and well, that is the next one they're giving you actually. But they're not just going to be giving you the marquee players. They're going to be giving you some awesome, fun Marvel characters. So Do I care that it is Marvel? Is that the reason I'm playing this game? Not really. I am playing this game and was interested in it because of Nate French, because of my love for LCGs. Is the Marvel theme a deterrent? Absolutely not. I like Marvel. I've seen all the movies because I'm a human being in 2019, and I grew up reading Marvel comics. I love comics. I am super into the theme. It is a boon for me, not a negative, but it is not a deal breaker. Like if this was another theme, I would still enjoy this game because I enjoy mechanics probably more than I enjoy theme. Case in point, I am not a Lovecraft fan. The whole Cthulhu thing does almost nothing for me. But I absolutely love Arkham Horror because that is a really fun system. So what does it feel like to play Marvel Champions, the card game? Well, it's fast, which is something you can't say about any other LCG. A game of Netrunner took about an hour. A game of Game of Thrones took 45 minutes to an hour. A campaign of Arkham Horror, which is really what you're signing up for when you play that game, could take 8 to 10 hours. A game of Lord of the Rings LCG, which usually would be a part of a small sort of campaign, like 3 quests sort of strung together, that would take a couple hours. Marvel Champions, the card game, takes 15 minutes. And that's not an exaggeration. That is pretty reliable. 30 minutes tops. And we're just talking solo mode, guys. You never have to wonder if I'm telling you the multiplayer times, because I'm not, because I haven't actually played this game at all multiplayer. I've just played it solo. This is a game that you can knock out in 15 minutes, and that pretty much includes setup. I have the setup down very fast now. So what you're doing in this game is you are picking a hero. Remember, solo mode. I'm not talking about multiple heroes. You pick a hero. You're going to build a deck for that hero. You are then going to pick a villain. You are then going to pick one of the potential scenarios to add to that villain's deck. You are then going to shuffle up both of those things, and you are going to play the game. You win if you defeat the villain. You lose if your hero dies. That's it. And you will usually come to a result in about 15 minutes, 30 minutes tops. The game is broken up into 2 phases. There is the player phase and the villain phase. On the player phase, now if you're familiar with Arkham or Lord of the Rings LCG, this is all very familiar. I mean, I picked this up in seconds. I just almost needed to, it's almost a system now that they're just refining. I almost just needed to look at the rules and see the differences between those games because this is so similar to them. So you take your turn, and on your turn, you have a handful of cards. Now, what's cool about this is there are no resources in this game. There's no money or chits or cardboard tokens you need to be moving around to track your money. Your money is your cards. Sort of think Mage Knight in the sense that if I want to pay for something in my hand, I got to get rid of other things in my hand to pay for that thing in my hand. Each card has a resource on it. There are different types of resources. You can buy any card with any resource, but there are some powers on cards that can only be procced by specific resources. So let's say you have a hand of 5 cards or 6 cards, which actually leads me to a very interesting point. So your hand size can vary because each hero in this game has 2 sides. You have your alter ego side, and you have your hero side. You start the game in your alter ego side. So if you're playing Captain Marvel, you start as Carol Danvers. Carol Danvers is going to have a power. She's also going to have her hit points. It's going to tell you how many hit points you start with, which is your health. If that goes to 0, you're dead. Hit points are the same on both sides, alter ego or hero. But your hand size differs. So when you're Carol Danvers, you have a hand size of 6. And when you are Captain Marvel, you have a hand size of 5. That can be even a little more extreme with somebody like She-Hulk, who has a hand size of 4 when she's a hero, and a hand size of 6 when she is Jennifer Walters. What is the difference in these two? Well, one is going to have obviously a larger hand size, but going to be unable to fight. So on your hero side, you have 3 stats. You've got thwart, you've got attack, and you've got defense. And on your alter ego side, you have recovery. So when you go to alter ego, you're going to be messing with schemes. You're going to be healing up. You're going to be sort of building up and getting ready. So thematically, it's going to be very similar to what you do when, what a superhero does when they're out of their costume, which is sort of prepare, deal with real world issues. And when they put the mask on, they kick some butt and defend and attempt to thwart schemes. So back to on your turn, you're going to be playing cards from your hand and spending cards from your hand in order to play those cards. You're going to be using powers. You can switch between your two sides, alter ego or hero, once per round. So if you are on the alter ego side at the beginning of your turn, you can go to hero, but you cannot go back unless you have some kind of game-breaking power, and vice versa. If you start your turn on hero, you could switch to alter ego, but you do not have to. I often find that in this game, the pacing of it is often spend 2 turns as alter ego, do my best to build up, switch to hero, and maybe only go back to alter ego maybe once, twice at most by the end of the game, and that's usually just, an emergency heal kind of situation. So you're in your alter ego mode to get ready to fight the villain, and then you switch over and you try to defeat the villain. Obviously, there are exceptions to this as well, but that's sort of the overall flow. At the end of your turn, you draw back up to your full hand of cards, which is very nice. It's not just like draw 1 at the end of your turn. So if you dump all your cards, you get your full hand size, which of course is dependent on what side you are on, alter ego or hero. After that, we go to the villain side. So the villain has a couple different things. There are 3 villains that come in the core set of the game. There is Ultron, there is Rhino, and there is Claw. The order you want to play them in is Rhino, Claw, then Ultron. There's not a campaign with these. I'm just saying that is sort of the level of difficulty, although in a weird way, Claw is the hardest for me usually. It depends who you're playing. But you want to start with Rhino, and on Rhino's turn, he's going to have some sort of a scheme. The scheme is going to be decided at the beginning. The scheme is sort of like what his plot is, his plan, the things that he's trying to do in order to win the game. And that is basically another way you can lose the game. If Rhino completes his scheme, schemes are usually going to have levels. Rhino, for example, has just 1 because he's sort of the entry. If you get a certain amount of threat on that scheme, and threat is added every turn, it's sort of like the Doom track in Arkham, or what I think it's just called Threat in Lord of the Rings as well. If there's a certain amount of threat on that scheme at the end of your turn, you automatically lose, and it's a little bit is added every turn. And of course, there are lots of awful ways in the game that more and more can start to be added, and it can become uncontrollable. So the villain can defeat you 2 ways: finish his scheme or her scheme, or just get your health points to 0. And you can only win in one way, which is physically defeating the villain, unless, I'm sure they'll break those rules later on with more villains as they come out. Let's quickly talk about what it means to buy a core set of this game, though, before we continue. Because they did something awesome and revolutionary in this one, revolutionary for them, at least in the capitalist sense, because they did not make you buy multiple core sets. I don't know why they didn't. I can only imagine it's because there's a certain level of backlash that has come from people getting burned out. And I think they also wanted to lower the barrier of entry of this. They paid a lot of money, I'd imagine, for this IP, being Marvel. Disney ain't cheap, and they wanted to get their bang out of it. And I think the bang for their buck out of it. And I think if people hear that they need to buy 2-3 core sets to be getting the real game, I think you lose a certain part of the consumer base that would be interested in this, because they're just going to glaze over at that thought, and won't even understand really what it means. Because in past LCGs, and by past I mean every single LCG before this one, you had to buy multiple core sets if you wanted to have the full experience. Because what LCGs, how they work is you're not buying packs of cards like Magic. You're buying fixed packs of cards that all have the same pack. So if you're the same card. So if I'm buying a pack and you're buying a pack, as long as it's the same name on the pack, we're getting the exact same card. So there's no rare searching. There's no going on eBay to find the gold foil fancy rare card that's OP and super powerful, and you have to have it if you want to play competitively. Instead, the way they kind of get you is, well, it's an LCG, so you'll be buying a pack every month if you want everything, at least, probably $12 there. But they also decide that some cards are rare in the core set arbitrarily, and so and of course, in your deck building, you can usually have 3 of a type of card. So, like in Netrunner, it was so egregious because the best cards that were necessary to be competitive were the cards they gave you 1 of. So you would be, on your second core set, you'd be spending, $60 again to get maybe 30 cards that you need that are all the 2 ofs. And then you had to buy a third one to get, and I'm not exaggerating, like 6 cards. Like there were 6 cards in the core set that had 1 ofs. Or, and so now you're buying a third to get your third of that. You're spending $60. It was I did it, and I felt awful doing it, but I loved the game and I wanted to play it at a tournament level. You need 1 core set with Marvel Champions, and I just want to say thank you. Everybody who bought the game wants to say thank you. you get 3 of every card you could need in this game. And if there's only 1 copy of it, then you can only ever have 1 copy of it in your deck. Thank you. You're welcome. I don't know why I said you're welcome. I didn't make the game. So let's get back to your turn really quick. Just want to say that's what you're getting with this Corset. You buy 1, you're done. The only reason you'd buy another one is if your friend wants to buy one and now you want to play the same superheroes, etc. But you can have 1 and play with a friend. But I don't know why we're talking about that because this is solo mode. So at the beginning of the villain phase, the villain drops 1 threat on their card. Remember, if it hits a certain number, it either goes to the next level, and eventually there will be a game end in that. Then the villain's going to do one of 2 things. It's going to either attack you or scheme. If you are in your hero form, it will attack you. It's going to do its damage. The villain's going to have 2 stats usually on them, a scheme and an attack. It is going to hit you, and then it is going to get, if you're familiar with the Lord of the Rings card game, a shadow card. So meaning you know the stat it's going to do. Like I'm looking at Ultron right now. His level 2 says he does 2 attack to me. But then I flip over the top card of his deck or her deck, Ultron's deck, and there are a certain amount of little boost stars at the bottom of cards. Sometimes it's 0, sometimes it can be all the way up to 4. There's probably going to be higher in the future, and you add that to the number. So this sort of mimics rolling a die and getting a little bit of randomness in there. So you know the minimum amount of damage you can take, but you don't know the most. So you kind of have to do a little bit of probability math and figure out just how bad this could be before you decide if you're going to take the hit, because you can defend. Everybody has a different defense level. The defense is just negates a certain amount of damage that you're going to be taking, but by defending, you are tapping your hero, or your it's not your alter ego if you're tapping to defend. You're tapping your hero, and they don't untap until the end of their turn. So now you do not have any hero powers like attacking or scheming or thwarting. Sorry, that's the opposite. That's how you get rid of scheme. You can't do either of those if you're tapped. So if you're defending, you're deciding your hero will sort of be sitting out that round. Now, of course, you can do other things, but your hero won't be doing them. If you're in your alter ego form, he or she, whoever the villain is going to scheme. Scheming is done exactly the same. You know their base value of scheme. It's written on their card. Then they're going to get a boost added to it. You could easily lose the game. The vast majority of times I lose this game, it is off of a horrible boosted card off of scheme. And I just went, what's the chance that I'm going to get +4 scheme here? And then it happens and you lose the game. After that, you deal 1 encounter card, very similar to Lord of the Rings LCG or Arkham Horror. Every player at solo mode, we only care about 1. You get 1 card face up in front of you. It either is going to be like a bad thing happens to you, or it's going to be an enemy, a minion, someone that you're going to be dealing with. They're going to be attacking you starting on the next round, and you need to kill them. Sometimes they have things like tough, meaning that if you hit them, they only lose the tough card. There are 3 different types of statuses in this game: stunned, toughed, and confused. Sometimes they'll have things like guard on them, which is basically taunt if you play magic. Or I guess that's Hearthstone. Guardian is magic. And that just basically means you have to defeat that villain before you can put any damage on the villain again, which is super annoying. So that's the basics of it. Let's talk about heroes. In your deck, you're going to have 15 cards that comes with every hero. So in the future, when you buy more heroes, you're going to get the hero card, their alter ego, and you're going to have 15 cards. From that, then you pick one of the aspects. So aspects in the game are different sort of types of cards you can add. So there is, let's go over them really quickly. There is justice, and there is, I'm rifling through them as I look here. There is justice, there is protection, there is aggression, and the last one is the one that's in my Spider-Man deck right now, which is leadership. So they're usually going to focus on different things. For example, leadership is mostly going to be about allies. So you can have allies in the game, same as you can in Arkham or Lord of the Rings. And they're basically extra actions. They're weaker versions of your hero that can come out, that can do some attacking, that can take some blocks for you, that can do some scheming for you, that can do other powers for you. You're also going to have certain support cards or upgrades or things like that. They're going to be helping you throughout your turn. So you're going to be taking 15 cards. Then you're going to be picking one aspect and a pile of neutral cards, just like every LCG. You're going to have some neutral cards that can be used in everything. And from there, you are going to be building a deck. And it must be at least 40 cards, I believe. I need to check that. I should have known that from the beginning. Pretty sure it's 40 cards. I have built a lot of decks so far, and but the main way I do it, and the reason that I kind of don't necessarily know exactly how many cards are in there, is because I'm admitting it here. I'm a net decker. I am somebody who is busy, and that is why I play fast solo games often. And I love piloting decks, but I don't love building decks. You might be surprised to hear that. You might be thinking, isn't the fun building it? Sometimes what's fun for me, though, is going to a website that has a list of awesome decks that I can check out and reading them and going, that's smart. That person has more time than me. They came up with an awesome deck. They are cool. I'm going to steal their deck. Yes, 40 cards. I was correct. 40 cards is what the minimum is. You can actually have more, which I was surprised to see. There is a website called Marvel CDB, MarvelChampionsDatabase.com. Every LCG has had sort of these fan-made websites that usually end in DB. This is a place where you can see other people's decks. You might love deck building, and I applaud you for it. I'm bad at it, which is crazy. The amount of LCGs I played, and I'm still like not a super awesome deck builder. I just think it's like you just really have to be familiar with the card pool, and I often am more just interested in exploring. That's sort of my personality. I want to be handed a deck that I know is awesome, and I want to learn how to pilot it. That's what's fun. Pilot is sort of the word we use in the LCG magic world of figuring out how to perfectly play a deck. So yeah, you're building a 40-card deck, or you're net decking it, or the game actually comes with a handful of decks for you in the back of the book that are not good. They are weak. I would use Marvel CDB. So the other thing that happens in in deck building is you're going to have a nemesis card. So in every villain's deck that you're fighting against, there's going to be a card in there that will bring out your nemesis. So every hero has sort of a weakness that potentially could come out, and they are devastating when they come out on the board. Whatever plans you had are instantly dashed, and you must deal with this villain in front of you, who's usually somebody awesome. Like it's Vulture. If you're Spider-Man, everybody has their specific one. You also have a obligation. So Arkham had a very similar thing. I forget what the word was, but there's one card that you must, whatever hero you pick, you have to shuffle that card into the villain deck, and that could come up, and that's usually a thing like, well, now you have to exhaust your hero, or X happens to you, and X is always really bad. Deck building is fun and fast, and net decking is easy and fun and fast as well. Let me give you my review. We are heading towards the 30-minute mark. I think this is a fantastic new version of the LCG system that I'm really familiar with. Why? Because this is fast. 15 minutes. I can sit down. I have a hero already sleeved. I have a villain already sleeved. I throw them down on the table. I shuffle up really quickly. I'm telling you guys, I am done in 15 minutes, including prep. And it is awesome, and I'm excited then to try it again. I want to try other heroes. I've now tried every hero against every villain. I think they're all really, really fun. They all play really, really differently. You've got Tony Stark, who has to build his suit before he's able to do really anything. You've got Black Panther, who has these, who gets more and more powerful, these snowballs, as he gets all these different items down on the board, and then he uses these events to trigger them all at once. You've got She-Hulk, who just hits really, really hard. You've got Captain Marvel, who is card draw supreme, and you've got Spider-Man, who is super defensive. The characters are interesting. It's fun. This is a review of the core set only, and I think you can get a lot of bang out of your buck for this. I've had this for about a month, maybe 6 weeks now, and I'm still enjoying it. I'm still looking forward to trying new decks. My fun loop here is go to Marvel CDB, look at a cool combination, meaning hero and aspect. So, She-Hulk and leadership. That's interesting. I'd kind of like to see what that looks like. I look that up. Somebody's built a deck. It's well reviewed on there. I know it's a pretty good deck. I'll try it, and I'll learn more about the card pool, learn more about the way certain cards work together, what heroes are good with different aspects, and that is a really fun experience for me. So if you are into Marvel, this is a gimme. You're going to want this game. If you are into LCGs, I think this is the next great evolution of the system. If you're like me and you've played so many of these LCGs, I think you're going to really enjoy that. Tomorrow, actually, I'm getting the next 2 packs delivered. I use Team Covenant for their subscription service. I've been using them for probably 10 years now. They just deliver to your house whatever LCGs you are currently subscribed to. I am not sponsored by them at all, but I find them very useful because I will just miss packs and then they go out of print and then I'm annoyed. Those packs come right to you. Tomorrow I am getting the first 2 packs, which is Captain America and the Green Goblin. And I think Miss Marvel as well. So there's 2 new heroes coming out and 1 new villain. So that's how the system's going to be working. They're going to be alternating every month. You're either going to get a hero or a villain when you get a new villain. That's like a whole new game because you can now take all the heroes you have versus that villain. They all play very differently. Or if you get a new hero, now you have a new hero to try against all the villains that you have. There's a huge amount of replayability here. What I love is that this is not a campaign. It's 15 minutes. Arkham Horror, as much as I love it, it is hard for me to finish an 8-hour campaign. By the time I'm 4 hours in, I forgot what I was doing. I forgot how the deck worked. I haven't played it in 2 weeks. I'm sitting down and I'm feeling stressed out and I'm not enjoying it as much. With Marvel, I pick a hero, I pick an aspect, I pick some random cards, or I go to Marvel CDB and I net deck and I enjoy sleeving a deck that I know is awesome, shuffling it up and getting ready to play. It is a simple game. You can learn it in 15 minutes, and I think there's a huge amount of expandability. I'm just reviewing the Corset right now. I'm going to give you a number review on this Corset. I'm giving this an 8.0 right now. I think this is a better than average game. I think this is technically this would be a great game, and it could be an incredible game. I would give Arkham Horror a 9.5 probably, purely just because it's such an immersive, amazing experience. I'm sure we'll review that at some point. This has the potential to beat that, especially with my situation right now with having 2 children and a very limited amount of time. This is the easiest game I have to get to the table on my own. Just whip it out, throw it on the table, sleeve it up. I'm playing 15 minutes, and I'm usually, it's got that Pringles once you pop you can't stop kind of vibe, and you just want to keep trying new decks and trying different things. And the more cards that come out, the better. Which is also another thing. This is how they sort of handled the problem of bloat and the barrier to entry of thousands and thousands of cards. You don't need to buy anything. You buy a hero that you like. You buy some villains that you like. Obviously, you've already bought the Corset. And you just go. You don't need stuff. You don't need to have everything. If you miss a hero, if the hero comes out you're not interested in, don't buy it. If a villain comes out you're not interested in, don't buy it. You're not going to need it for other things. They've talked, of course, about having campaigns that link things together in the future. I'm sure they will. They're going to have big boxes. I'm sure there's going to be an X-Men box that has all the X-Men in it, things like that. But none of it's necessary. Buy as you go. Play what sounds fun to you, and just know that the mechanics of all the LCGs that you love are here. I mean, there's literally cards that are the same. Nick Fury is basically just exactly the same card as Gandalf, with just different art on it. If you love the system, this is the fast, fun, awesome version of it, and I recommend it very highly. That is an 8.0 for Marvel Champions, the card game. Thank you so much for listening to the very first episode of Game Brain Solo Mode. We will be back soon. I promised under 30 minutes or less. We're at 32 minutes. I'm going to call that a win because we had an intro at the top. Every episode, you will get 1 review of a solo game. I'll give you all my thoughts on it. I'll see you next time. Keep listening to Game Brain. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Solo mode is the solo mode, and you're all alone in the solo mode, and you miss your group, or you had some kids, but you bought some games. Why did you buy those games? It's the solo mode, it's the solo mode, and you're all alone in the solo mode, and your group is gone, or you had some kids, but you bought those games. Why did you buy those games? Sorry.